So next is industry presentation by Mr. Samir Kanwar, Chairman, ConnexRM.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Samir. I'm the chairman of ConnexRM, which is a part of the Apart Technologies company. Today, what I'm going to be talking about is a topic which is a very interesting topic and very close to our heart, which is building a knowledge economy through higher education. What we thought we'll do is we'll just try to understand what is the concept of a knowledge economy, number one, and where do we stand as India in the global scenario. So, a lot of people have been talking about a knowledge-based economy is the future. Whether you talk about countries like Singapore or Dubai, every country is now talking about saying we want to become a knowledge-based economy. But what does a knowledge-based economy really mean, right? So it talks about having the entire ecosystem, right, from individuals, the government, the education institutions, all coming together to create a set of new technologies which will help in the progress of the country itself. And that's where we talk about a knowledge-based economy where you can become competitive, very, very critical for countries today because every country wants to be at the forefront of a specific skill or a particular technology. And to be able to be competitive in the global world, a knowledge-based economy is becoming a requirement. To the extent, when we talk about the World Bank, they've actually listed out 4 different areas, or 4 pillars as they call that, for any country to become a knowledge-based economy. The first pillar, which they talk about, clearly is talking about the economic kind of the entire ecosystem which is in place, the economic regime which is put in place. The second aspect is very, very close to what we are discussing today and tomorrow, which is from an education perspective and skill development perspective. So that's the second pillar which comes in the picture. The third area, which all of us need to be really clear about, is innovation, right? Unless and until we innovate, we cannot actually be considered as a knowledge-based economy. And fourth, to allow all of these to actually come together is where we talk about the ICT infrastructure and the framework which has to be put in place to enable a country to become a knowledge-based economy. From an India perspective, we take a pause to look towards where does India figure in the 2014 World Bank's Knowledge Economy Index, the KEI. I'm very sorry to say, but we are 106th out of 145 countries which were listed in this. So even when you look at just the Asia Pacific, this is a report which was published by the Asia Development Bank, we were actually rated very, very poorly. And if you can really look at the rating which has come across, we are rated around 3.06 on a scale of 10, of which the biggest index on those 4 parameters we talked about was innovation, which also is a very poor 4.2. So it's not something which we can feel very proud of. And what is worse is if you actually go a few years before, which is the first index report which came out in 2008, we were actually better off in 2008. But even in that situation, when we look towards another very important pillar, which is of very, very critical importance to these discussions we're having today and tomorrow, which is on education, we realize that we actually stand a very poor 2.26 on a 10 scale index, right? So while we talk about it, while we talk and really pride ourselves in the kind of education we've had in the past, we've had in the last panel discussion being talked about as the, Sone ki Chidiya, as Sir rightly pointed out, Nalanda University was supposed to be a seat of knowledge in the ancient India, in the ancient world, to be frank. But today we are very, very, below even global standards. Even certain countries in our neighborhood figure a little better than India. But really, I think what Mr. Dilip Chinoy talked about is very critical. The OECD countries, which are the developed countries, really hog the limelight in terms of education. They are amongst the top in terms of the education indices. The developing countries or the emerging countries are definitely in that 4 to 6 range. And then you have the least developed countries, which are obviously struggling from an education perspective. I'm going to take a pause here to look at what reality from a knowledge-based economy is, but also go into what are the requirements today which we are seeing in the industry. We all are aware, we've been discussing since morning about what are the emerging trends in technology. The reality is we are becoming a connected world today. And we're talking about connected everything. We're not just talking about connections between individuals, but we're talking about connected campuses. We're talking about connected smart cities, for example, coming in a picture. And we're talking about a population which is going to become more and more demanding of information so that they can take some discussions or decisions. And that's where we have developed this concept about connected everything. A study which was carried out talks about IoT and analytics. The global outlook is the entire aspect is exploding. By 2020, we'll have an installed base of more than 20.8 billion units, which are all going to be talking to each other. From an education perspective, we've already seen the green shoots happening in the US, where the campuses are connected right from the aspect of security aspects about access control, which student comes in, which student is not supposed to be on that particular campus, for example, going down to the levels of how do I actually better manage energy within the campus itself. So can I look towards what is the amount of air conditioning required, the lighting required, all of those aspects are something which our information is today being sent out by all these devices, and we can actually control all that information. And if the students in our institutes are not given an exposure to that while they are in school, they're going to be falling way behind by the time they actually go out in the industry to actually work. And that's where the skill gap mismatch is being talked about. Similarly, in the past few weeks or months, you would have been reading about the huge uproar which is happening in the IT and IT-enabled services industry in India, where there's a huge challenge of the manpower which we have. We unfortunately have not been focusing too much on innovation, and we've been doing a lot of what is known as the cyber, in a way, the cyber coolie is the term which people have derogatory used for us as well, where we are actually just doing a cost arbitrage of moving work or jobs from the developed nations into India so that we can give them a cost benefit. But unless and until we disrupt the way we think right now, and that disruption has to start in the school level, in the college level, in the higher education level. Are we skilling them enough? Are we providing them enough skills or imparting enough skills that they can make a meaningful contribution? And I think a few of the initiatives which have been taken in the past couple of years by the government of India, including looking towards developing entrepreneurial cells, looking towards skill development as a critical aspect, the ICT infrastructure which is being put in place today, is all contributing or moving us towards fulfilling the requirements of a knowledge-based economy. This is something which Paul would be very aware of. There's a program which got initiated in the UK back in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, called Higher Ambitions. The entire aspect was how do we move the entire education system to develop skills or impart skills in the students so that by the time they come out in the industry, they're actually capable of taking over that particular role and responsibility and contributing meaningfully. That's something which I think should be really looked upon by all of us to see how we can help in those initiatives. Now, where does ConnexRM really come into picture? When we looked at this entire problem, we looked at it from two perspectives. One is, are our people skilled enough to go across into the industry? And second, do we have the right communication skills, right? And those are the two challenges we really looked into. So from a technology point of view, it's just not a question of technology alone in terms of understanding technology. It's also a question of, in this connected world, how do I work collaboratively together with other people, whether in the country, in the city, or on a global basis as well. And that's where collaboration is becoming a very, very critical need of the hour. To be able to collaborate better, I need to be able to communicate better. And what are those communication aspects which we're really looking at? And that's where we have actually developed our solutions for the institutes, the higher technology institutes, to look towards how do we help in both these initiatives. The first one is what we call as an edutech paradigm, which basically comprises of three key elements. One is how do we build smart schools and smart colleges or smart institutes, and that is through a system which we have developed. Along with that, how do we ensure that the assessments, which is becoming a huge challenge, and every day we've been hearing about the challenges of results not coming out on a timely basis, which means the students may potentially lose a year as well. And that's where the online assessment, and not just what we call across as online verification or validations, but we're talking about online assessments becoming a critical part. And how do we look towards leveraging analytics tools and business intelligence to actually give feedback back to the education institutes, the administrators, to look towards what's to be improved? Are the faculty, the administration geared up to handle the challenges of the real world is something which is a very, very critical need of the hour. And that's where the entire smart school system which is being developed is what we talk about here. So right, a lot of people talk about student information system or ERP for schools and colleges being the critical aspect. But today what's happening is these are all supposedly legacy technologies. When we look towards ERPs for schools, it's only looking towards enabling or IT enabling the backbone. But today students are looking towards driving a lot more from the institutes. They don't want to talk just in terms of sitting across in the classroom and getting training, but they want to look towards learning at their own time. And that's where the whole idea about a 360-degree feedback mechanism and interactions between faculty, administration, students, whenever they want it, is becoming a critical aspect. Right from the time they want to look towards, is this the right institute for me? What kind of things do you have to offer to me? To the time when they exit from the institute and become alumni, how can they contribute back? Are very critical elements of this particular stuff. I know we are running short of time. Give me 2 minutes and I'll be done. Similarly, from the institute's perspective, how do we look towards partnering more with the industry and looking towards simplifying the entire process is where we've also developed a system where it's going to be more of a payment portal solution where our system integrates with payments portal solutions at no cost to the institutes, but it's something which actually benefits tremendously. So it's a kind of a holistic picture we have looked at from how do we look at technology driving the next wave of interactions and collaboration between students. And the second aspect we looked at was from a communication point of view. The entire, right from the time when I was in school, the way we have actually gone through communication is let's learn a language, but let's look at how do we read it first, how do we write, and then let's look towards speaking and listening skills. But when we go out in the industry, what we realize is it's just the other way around. People want us to actually be able to listen effectively first, to be able to understand what the other people are really wanting to communicate, then being in a position to speak and articulate ourselves very, very clearly. Obviously, read, very, very important because you want to understand what the other person is trying to, from a written communication, talk to you about. But very, very critical at the highest end of the pyramid is how do I write effectively? Because when you are talking to somebody, you are able to communicate your emotions to that person. But when you're writing an email or writing a letter, it's the prerogative of the reader to decide how he or she listens or reads what you're trying to write across. And that's where the entire focus from our perspective is to look towards moving away from a traditional, theoretical base into a more practical oriented, blended education model from a communication perspective, where we actually flip it across. We talk more from an application and practice point of view, and then look towards the concepts and personalizations to support what the real requirements of the students should be, at least to help them communicate effectively in the corporate world, right? And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Basically, what we are trying to do as ConnexRM is trying to prepare students for what is really coming across to be the knowledge-based economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sameer, Chairman of ConnexRM. This is a very innovative solution which you are providing. Even the Higher Education Minister of Rajasthan also appreciated this and called them to come to Rajasthan and give a presentation to the government. So we are very thankful for you to explain it here in the audience. So we have here in the audience the Head of Innovation Cell in the College Education Department of Government of Rajasthan, Dr. Vinod Bhardwaj. Sir, I request you to please present a memento to Mr. Sameer. Mr. Bhardwaj looks after the innovations what College Education Department can take up. So I think he's the right person to give a token of appreciation to Mr. Sameer Kanwar, Chairman of ConnexRM. Thank you very much, Mr. Sameer, and thank you very much, Dr. Bhardwaj.